All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning for the Oregon State, hey gang. Thank you for joining us for the Oregon State Board of Agriculture meeting today, Wednesday, September 11th, 2024. I'm Elin Miller, Chair of the Board, and this meeting is now officially called to order. I'd like to begin by asking the Department of Agriculture Board Coordinator Carla Belness to review a few housekeeping items for the meeting.
Good morning. We would like to remind people to please mute your phones and your computer audio during the call to prevent unnecessary background noise. We also request that only board members and presenters turn on your camera during the call. And if you are joining the call online, ODA pre-meeting materials are posted on the website at oda.direct/board-agriculture, and anything that is handed out during the meeting will be posted after the meeting. And just a reminder to please refrain from using the chat feature during the call to chat with either board members or each other. We'll only be monitoring the chat for sign-in and technical difficulties. And just a reminder, the meeting is being recorded.
Thank you, Carla. Before we do roll call, I just wanted to talk about today's meeting. I think this is a pretty special meeting for us for a variety of reasons. First, it's special because we have two new board members who will be introduced more fully later. We have both Ellie and Ty joining us from at least the more beautiful southern part of the state of Oregon. No bias on my part. Anyway, so we have that as a special piece of this meeting. The second special piece is we're saying goodbye to two board members who have served for 8 years very well, served as chair of the board, each of them, and have just been amazing in their contribution to agriculture. So Brian Harper and Louisa Santa Maria, and we'll say a little bit more later, but that makes this a pretty special meeting. It's also a pretty special meeting to be able to be here in Hermiston. You know, just driving through and seeing all the agriculture on the way, and it's just one of those things that, you know, kind of send whatever they're called, goosies. But Hermiston also has been special because of Eric, your involvement in all the coordination and all the prep, and I just want to say thank you for that. And also all the preparation on the behalf of staff, because the timing we have for being here at this meeting meant that it's pretty darn hard to get a caterer, pretty darn hard. So if you saw our deputy director doing dishes last night, that was part of the making sure we had things in place and ready to go. But last night's reception was phenomenal, and I think we need to think about continuing that. We had excellent turnout. I want to just say thank you to the community here for making that happen, but a special kudos, Eric, to you for your involvement. And last, for just a special focus for making this meeting what it is this will be the last meeting for a couple of employees, longtime employees and leaders within ODA. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that, but Lauren Henderson, who served us in the interim as interim director, and then Jim Johnson, who has been really the focal point for understanding one of probably the most complex and controversial issues that we deal with here at ODA. Finally, I'll just say it's pretty special just to be here with all of you. You know, we all have an opportunity to spend our time where we want to spend our time, and the fact that we're paid so well to be on this board, I'm kidding. The fact that we show up, and we show up with the backgrounds of, regardless of political party, regardless of commodity, regardless of geography, we show up and we're Aggies, which is part of our focus theme. Thank you, Jonathan and team, for the new strategy. But we show up. And I think that showing up makes this board a very, very special board. So I just wanted to begin with that. And then I will now turn this over to Carla. Would you call the roll for introductions? And I'll begin with myself, Elin Miller, farmer, Umpqua.
Chad Allen.
Chad Allen.
Barbara Boyer is out today. Brian Harper.
Brian Harper, member, farmer, Junction City.
Ty Kluwer.
Ty Kluver, producer, farmer, cattle rancher, Klamath Falls.
Miguel Lopez is out today. Ellie Norris.
Ellie Norris, farmer, Umpqua.
Eric Orem.
Good morning, Eric Orem, farmer, board member from Hepner.
Luisa Santamaria.
Luisa Santamaria, a public member, Oregon State University Extension.
Josh Zielinski.
Josh Zielinski, nurseryman from Salem, Oregon, board member.
Dean Simonich.
Stacy Simonich, Dean of OSU's College of Agricultural Sciences and Director of the Oregon Agricultural Experiment Station, one of which is about, a couple hundred feet away.
Director Sharplo Hansen.
Lisa Sharplo Hansen, Director of the Oregon Department of Agriculture.
And we'll quickly ask the folks in the audience to introduce themselves real quickly. Jonathan, could we start with you?
John Sando, Assistant Director at Oregon ODA.
Lindsay Eng, COO, Oregon Department of Ag.
Martin Henderson, Deputy Director, Department of Ag. Casey Prentice, Oregon Department of Ag.
Rusty Rock, Program Area Director, Department of Ag.
Jim Johnson, Land Use and Water Planning Coordinator, Department of Agriculture.
Bill Moore, retired farmer.
All right, thank you. Carla, could you go through and more inform us on some more instructions before we get started?
You bet. For those folks that are online, if you would please use the chat box to sign in so we have a record of who's joining us this morning. And again, just a reminder to please refrain from chatting in the chat box, and we'll be monitoring the chat box for technical issues. And then again, pre-meeting materials are posted on the website.
Great. So the other information is note that the public comment today is scheduled for 10:40 a.m. And so we'll definitely make sure we're on time and break for public comment. So anybody who was planning on calling in at that time or being here present at the meeting. We did receive 13 is the number, 13 public comments and actually now we have 4 requests, I think, to provide verbal comments during this meeting. If anybody online or present would like to sign up to provide public comments during that public comment period, please make a request if you're online using the chat box, including your name and organization, or use the sign-in sheet if you're here in the room. And comment at time, we'll just repeat, because this is pretty hard sometimes, is limited to 3 minutes per person. So this meeting is being recorded. And if board members and guests would please state your name for the record before you begin your comments, that would be great.
We are having video problems, but the folks online can still see us. So I think we'll okay. So then we need to take a break. So we restart.
So
There you go.
We're on. Okay, so did we miss anything we need to? Okay, good. All right. So we'll move on to the first, thank you. Thank you. Josh, thanks you. We'll move on to the minutes for approval. You've had a chance to review the minutes in advance of the meeting. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve. Is there, yeah,
I make a motion to approve the minutes from
Right.
the last board meeting.
and Josh for the record?
Josh Zelinski.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I, Ty Cleaver, would like to second the motion.
Okay, and you say for the record, Ty, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, you need to say your name for the record every time, just so.
okay, Ty Cleaver, I second.
Thank you, Ty. That's great. Any further discussion, correction, additions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thanks, you guys. Okay. Next on the agenda is our director, who's going to be giving us a report. And last time we wanted to, it was such a great report, we said we needed to extend the time. So hopefully we've given her enough time this time to cover all the things she'd like to. So Director Sharpless Hansen.
Thank you. Well, good morning. For the record, Lisa Sharplow Hansen, Director of ODA. I'm going to really watch the time because I actually think I have more potentially than what we have time for. So we're going to do a little adjusting. How's that? First of all, I really want to welcome Ellie and Ty to the board. Thank you for your service to agriculture and to the state of Oregon. This is really important work that you do here with the board, and we are so excited to have your perspective and the representation each of you bring as people and from the sectors of the industry that you work with and the diversity of Oregon agriculture that it helps to represent. So thank you for that. I think I'll start off with, as I do with most of them, lots of change. We continue just to evolve. New board members, new staff at ODA, and a couple of departures since our last board meeting. Jess Polson, who was our program director for market access, has moved on. But since then, since our last board meeting, early July, Lindsay Ng joined our team as our COO. Hopefully you've had a chance to visit with her a little bit. ODA is not new to Lindsay. She spent some 13 years, I think, at ODA, went out to the private sector and came back. And so we are just thrilled to have her in the COO position. And that is a position that we recreated. We took an existing position and rewrote a job description for where we saw a need. And I seriously believe it is paying dividends rapidly in having someone really focusing on the business of the Oregon Department of Agriculture. We have a new executive assistant in the director's office, Laura Passage. She started early July as well. Sherry Kudna, who was the executive assistant during Katie Koba's time as director, went with Katie to DAS as her assistant and has come back to ODA to help us, and she is doing some special projects and really helping us catch up on some things that we needed to do, and we're delighted to have her back as part of our team. We also have recruited a former DOJ contact attorney for us, who's going to work part-time working on natural resource issues with us, especially focused on the work that we need to do here in the lower Umatilla groundwater management area in Hermiston. You're going to hear more about that later this morning, so I'm not going to go into that. But we are thrilled to have Renee Moulin, who has expertise in water quantity and water quality and knows the department's programs, come to work with us to help us move some of these really important initiatives forward. So that gives you a sense of there's a lot happening at ODA. In between meetings, it just seems like we are moving and working on moving forward with our strategic plan, thinking about succession planning, and aligning our work as we move forward. Agency budget request was due August 30th. We made the deadline. Hooray. Staff worked really, really hard to get that together. It is yeoman's work to do the agency request budget. And if you haven't looked at it, it's online. We did not provide you a copy of it because it's this thick. But you'll hear more about that in one of the presentations this morning as well. The piece that I would draw attention to that I think will be an ongoing discussion with this board is really around financial solvency in the agency. We've talked a lot, I think, over time about the diversity of funding that we have in our agency. We rely heavily on work that we do fee for service in our brands program, in our shipping point program, and then also our license and registration fees. Those are known as other funds. At one point in the budget development process, we realized that during this current biennium, with inflation and cost of living increases, we had really drawn down our cash fund balances. And so it puts us in a place looking forward into next biennium where we'll talk to you a lot about upcoming potential fee increases that we're working through and what we need to do with fees to keep the agency solvent. We're also embarking in some discussions around some of the services that we have provided historically, and we will start discussions with several sectors about, does it make sense for us to continue those services? So again, much change, but more to come in that. I just wanted to give you the primer of some of the challenges around it. Important to note, and I know several of you love strategic planning, so I will bring this to you. Our strategic plan is adopted and in, and we are really thinking about, again, the work that we do. So you may remember from the last meeting, Goal 1 is organizational excellence. One of our first commitments to Goal 1 is to get our management team through additional management training. Lindsay and Jonathan have made the first step in that to show leadership and bring everybody along by starting what is known as foundational training. And we're really working to build the foundation of knowledge and language across the agency with the changes that have happened in terms of some of the leadership expectations and the needs in terms of being a manager in state government. And we think that will propel ODA forward and really help us support the staff. Goal 2 is modernization. And we've really focused on IT modernization. This week, we had a conversation, and this will be step 1 in IT modernization in terms of working with changing our contractor. We typically have had our internal services around our servers and our internal infrastructure. We are going to contract with DAS, the Department of Administrative Services, to support that. And that will provide us ongoing upgrades rather than 10-year, 12-year spans of time, lifespan, and more continuity in terms of those services and et cetera. So that is like step 1, again, aligning with our strategic plan. And then customer focus is Goal 3. And we are in the process of preparing to send out a customer service survey agency-wide, as well as internally, we will be doing a Gallup survey looking at staff's and their satisfaction and how they feel about the organization in this next quarter coming up. And so hopefully we'll be able to report out a little bit of that to you at the December meeting. Jonathan and I talked about this going forward. I think we're going to try and figure out how to formalize some updates to the board on the strategic plan, knowing that it's an important focus. And I think that helps us hold our feet to the fire around it moving forward. A couple of other things. So in your packet, there were a couple of documents that were added. About a week ago, when California announced they had a case of high-path avian influenza in livestock, it made me go, and say, okay, what have we done in Oregon to prepare? And what plans do we have? There is an extensive write-up with what Dr. Schultz has done and his collaborative work with OHA in terms of tabletop exercises and what we've done working with the livestock sector around preparation should, well, I think it's more like when, HiPath AI appears in Oregon. When I thought about that, I'm like, I think I need to update the governor. So we did this in terms of a governor's update, but I thought it was also a good one for the board. Remembering back to questions about it, I think back in probably April-ish. So that's in there. The other thing that's in your packet as an update to save time in my report is the work and the involvement of ODA this summer during the fire season. You may or may not know, we are responsible for ESF 11, which is basically agriculture and livestock. ODA provides support to local communities and helps make connections for those county entities providing service around livestock. We also had staff monitoring fires and being part of the Oregon Emergency Management System throughout. It was a big workload to keep up, and it has been an incredibly busy fire season. But there's an update in your packet as well, just to give you a sense of the additional support that we're providing. Governor Kotek has requested disaster relief from Secretary Vilsack on 2 occasions so far. One for major hail damage in the Ontario area. I think it was probably back in June-ish, if I'm looking. Yeah, okay. And then also early in the fire season for help. There has been a response back, and there are programs that have been opened up through FSA. But in terms of crop damage, there needs to be a full assessment completed. That was the latest conversation and correspondence back and forth for USDA to provide that final analysis. So more to come, but I want you to know the governor's really providing leadership in this realm and advocating for Oregon to get additional emergency resources in to help support our farmers and ranchers in light of the tough summer that we've had. Oregon OSHA recently publicized rules for farm labor housing. They're proposed rules that are out for public comment. This has been a multi-year process developing the proposed rules. So those are available, and I can have, Sunny isn't here, she's very involved with them. Get you the website if you want to review them. They're extensive. Along with that, during the 2023 legislative session, the legislature allocated $5 million to ODA to provide grant funding to help those individual operators that have farm labor housing to help meet, I'm going to say help meet the upgrades. We are in the process of developing rules because we now know what the draft rules look like for setting up that grant program. Our target date for having something ready is the first part of 25. So again, another big workload, but this will be a really important effort to help support Oregon agriculture. So some upcoming events. In October, we are scheduled to meet with the OSU leadership, my leadership team, and Dean Simonage's leadership team to get to know each other. There's been, again, lots of change and an opportunity to find common issues and build bridges and look for opportunity for additional collaboration in places. I'm really excited about this because there are a lot of things going on, and we need the support and expertise of the science at OSU to help us make sound decisions moving forward. So that is an exciting event to look forward to. We're scheduled in October to do our first in-person all managers meeting since pre-COVID. And so again, thinking about the alignment with the strategic plan, this is going to be a really important event. We're going to do some team building at that event, as well as some training. Again, level setting across the management team in the agency. Later this month, I will attend the National Association of State Department of Agriculture annual meeting. It's in Indianapolis this year. I've been asked if I would be willing to serve in an at-large position on the board, and I have accepted that. And so we'll see how that works in the rest of the process, but I've agreed that I will do that. And should it work out, I'm looking forward to the opportunity and the additional exposure within the NASDA organization and the opportunity that that could provide Oregon and the West Coast. Canola, the ongoing canola story. For the new board members, canola has been an issue for a decade and a half-ish for the department, especially in the Willamette Valley. There are special regulations, is how I'll say it, for growing canola in what is called the Willamette Valley Control Area. Every legislative session, it seems like that set of laws is revisited. It was revisited again during the 2024 short legislative session. There is a lot of contention around how much, where should we grow canola in the Willamette Valley. I'll just put it into those. Lots of contention. The legislation that was proposed in 2024 was probably the closest thing I've seen in my career since this debate started to coming to some consensus. It didn't. And so only 500 acres is allowed to be grown. That conversation is continuing. The governor's office will be convening another work group in early October. There are 3 other rapeseed control areas in the state. One of them is in Central Oregon. Malheur has one, and I can't remember where the other one is. Recently, the Central Oregon Control Area petitioned ODA to repeal the rules. We went through a public hearing process. The same set of issues that are in the Willamette Valley exist in Central Oregon. Different cropping, kind of different mixes, but when you talk about it, it's coexistence. And so we announced on Monday, we are leaving that control area in place for the time being and hoping that the upcoming discussions around the Willamette Valley may provide some context for a larger solution going forward. So I cross my fingers that we will make more progress around the Willamette Valley. It's clear that there is need for rotational crops in both places. It's clear people have contended, canola is a crop that uses less water, given the drought issues in Jefferson County and other places. I've heard it and I understand, but just given the opportunity to potentially have context for something bigger, we're going to hold on for a little bit longer to the system that's in place. Okay, I am almost on time. This is good. Wow. So I'm happy to take any questions. Those were the high-level comments that I had. I have 2 ideas. One, we have 5 minutes. We can have Ellie and Ty introduce themselves now, or they could do it during the board updates later in the meeting. So your choice.
Yeah. Why don't we actually have them introduce themselves now? And my thought was tomorrow morning, we have a time set away for the board to talk about priorities and issues. And I think at that time too, we can incorporate anything that Lisa has shared with us of saying, hey, wow, that's something I'm glad you're focusing on and we need to think about or whatever, if that's okay. But why don't we go ahead and maybe kick it off with Ty? That work for you?
I just work here to do what I get told to do. Okay, so my name is Ty Claver. I am a 3rd-generation farmer from Klamath Falls, Oregon. My quick background, I grew up on a hay, cattle, and sheep operation in the Klamath Basin. And then I would pursue my educational career at Len Benton Community College and Oregon State University. I was a very avid participant on the livestock judging teams at both places. I then returned to the basin at the beginning of our major water conflict in 2001. And my first job was I was a field representative for Senator Gordon Smith at the time, and my job was to convey all of what was going on the ground to DC. I then taught agriculture at Henley High School for a couple years, and then returned to the private sector of farming. And as our water conflict grew deeper and more imperiled, we realized the need to diversify what we were doing. So after several years as a hobby brewer, we started Skyline Brewing Company 7 years ago. And albeit life is a game that you learn what to do by doing it the wrong way, I'm really excited about where we're headed with that, and hopefully adding kind of some meat products to go with what we're doing on the beer front. And I think hopefully we can intertwine all these together into something that people will find really interesting. On the personal side, me and my wife celebrated our 21st anniversary this year. We have a wonderful 17-year-old boy and 16-year-old girl who are very, very avid 4-H and FFA participants. And looking back at the impact that 4-H and FFA had on my life, they are both endeavors that I contribute whatever I can to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ty. Ellie.
Hi. Okay, I'm Ellie Norris. I'm a second-generation blueberry farmer from outside of Roseburg, Oregon. We have about 700 acres of fresh-picked blueberries, and we ship internationally and domestically. I have been involved with the Oregon Blueberry Commission, the North American Blueberry Council, and the U.S. High Bush for the last 10 years or so. Currently sitting as vice chair for the North American Blueberry Council and on their export and financial committees as well. I have a great passion for export, continuing legacy farms, and getting local youth involved in agriculture. So I'm involved with our Boys and Girls Club locally, developing an agricultural program to get kids out of the classroom and back into the fields and see where their food comes from. And that's me. So thank you guys. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you to both of you. We are very excited to have both of you on the board. And we anticipate we may have 2 additional new board members at our December meeting. So this is going to be kind of a new crew as we go forward. But so you guys will be old timers by then. And so you can help coach the new folks as we go forward. And I also want to say thank you, Lisa. Excellent presentation. Lots of meat there, lots of things for us to think about, and obviously a lot of changes that you're leading through. So again, thank you for your leadership. Next on the agenda, we have Jonathan, I believe, and Jonathan and Lindsay are going to be talking to us about the ODA budget and the legislative update for a fun legislative session coming in the future. And while you guys are sitting down, not that I should call out a new person that go ahead and sit down, but we do have a guest joining our room. I'm sorry, we were expecting you to be here earlier, but would you mind introducing yourself? I'm sorry.
I expected to be here earlier too. My apologies for being late. My name is Shannon Davis, and I'm Deputy Director of the Department of Quality. Super grateful for the invitation, Director Hanson, and hope to get to know you.
We're excited for you to be here.
Thank you. I am just thrilled to have Shannon join us and for all of you to have a chance to interact with her. We work very closely with the Department of Environmental Quality on many issues. You're going to hear more about one of them later this morning. So you'll get there's a theme in all of this. But we are close partners, and Shannon is an absolutely great partner for ODA. And I think the more that we all get to know each other, the better and more collaboratively we can work through some of the really tough issues that are facing Oregon Ag. So thank you, Shannon, for taking the time and coming.
Hey, no problem. Many of us were trying to get here, so thank you. All right, we'll kick it over to the 2 of you. Thanks.
Well, good morning, Chair Miller, Director Sharpelo Hanson, members of the board, Jonathan Sandow, Department of Ag.
So today we're going to kind of do the, I think, kind of typical format of running through legislative and budget pieces. We got a late minute request for a song and dance duo between Lindsay and I. So we are not quite prepared, but now knowing the expectations that are set, we'll take it under consideration. So I think for folks that might be new to this process or can take a refresher, I'll just take a few minutes to try to set up the broader picture for legislative sessions, and then kind of go through some details, and then Lindsay will go through a lot of the budget components. But so every 2 years, odd number years, Oregon has a long session, and then every even year there's a short session. Long sessions are when agencies through the governor are able to submit what we call LCs, legislative concept bills, policy bills. It is also when the 2-year budget process is worked as well. And so that is why this time around is pretty heavy in terms of both legislative concepts, policy work, and then also budget as well, because we are heading into the 2025 legislative session. And so I think also with that being said, I think it's a good reminder too, in terms of by extension, right, as board members, acting as board members, acting as staff, right, at ODA, we are part of the executive branch, which is a separate body of government than the legislative branch. And so how we interact with the legislatures is very different in terms of advocacy groups, right, that some may be involved with, or different walks of life that you engage with the legislatures. And so we support, right, within the executive branch, the governor's priorities, right? We support within the governor's expectations, and the executive branch's kind of interactions with the legislatures, right? There is a separation of powers. And so we interact with the legislative body in a manner that's very kind of technical and expertise driven. We give a lot of kind of input on how things would be implemented, the implications of policies. Very rarely will we or other state agencies will go out in full support or opposition of policy bills that are not the governor's. That is a very rare occasion. It does happen. We were able to do it last session with a pesticide bill for licensing tribes. And so there are times where it does happen, but it is rare that, the agencies by extension, boards and commissions, right, take stances on policy bills that are not the governor's and not agency bills. So kind of within that context, we put forward 6 legislative concepts. They're still concepts. That the final decision to submit anything happens in December. After complete review is done with us and with the governor's office. And so, up until December 13th is filing deadline, but hopefully we'll hit that target sooner. But up until the December 13th filing deadline, everything is still in concept form, and nothing has been filed yet. And so I think I ran through a little bit of these last time with the board, but knowing, conversations, change, board members are here or there. We do have kind of one-pagers that were handed out that look like this. And they're each one kind of one-pagers of each one of our ledge concepts. I'm not going to go through these, will not go through these point by point, but I think I'll introduce them at a high level. We are pretty informal, so if there are questions along the way, jump in and ask. If there's something that we should be highlighting that maybe is not in here, let us know. We will continue to make these summaries make sense to folks. But just starting kind of with the first legislative concept that we're putting forward, I think for folks that have been around a little bit, during the pandemic, there was a little bit of a constraint within the meat processing industry. And so we were authorized and to go kind of pursue a state meat inspection program underneath USDA. And we got that full approval in 2022. The program is growing, it's maturing. I would say that it's been a good success, especially, and it was driven a lot by Deputy Director Henderson and a lot of that vision set forward. In the policy, in the law that authorized it, Oregon, we said meat products. Well, the USDA specifically wants to see the Poultry Product Act reference so we can inspect poultry products. So we're going back and we are going to add the Poultry Product Inspection Act as an explicit reference so we can add that in. So very technical. It doesn't have a budgetary implication. Pretty technical policy bill. The second one, and these did print double-sided, so you're going to have to flip with me. The second one, I think we talked a little bit about how this is a nuanced one, but it makes sense once we talk about it. We regulate a lot of the commercial feed, livestock disease controls, and then swine garbage statutes. But a lot of these statutes are underneath the state vet. They are old statutes. They've been around for a long time. Their enforcement action, the only enforcement action that we have legally available to us is criminal enforcement. And so more modern enforcement compliance techniques are civil penalties to issue civil penalties to get compliance and not create criminal kind of records and backgrounds of folks for not having the correct paperwork, for not reporting the right labels. And so we're going back through these statutes and we're going to align with many of the other states around us and ask for civil penalty authority to kind of have a proportionate enforcement response to administrative programs. Again, no major budgetary implications here, but this one I think is going to take a lot of nuancing, just because you're asking for basically enforcement action authority, but really it's to make sure that it's a proportionate response. LC number 3. This is a very, very technical legislative concept. We always have 1 or 2 of these every long session. And this one is, I think the short standard is that we enforce the fertilizer labels. The kind of the controlling body of that, of what those labels look like, changed the label standards. They changed some of the definitions. We adopt those by statute, so we have them to enforce off of. And so when they made those slight changes to some of the labeling requirements, we have to go in and update the statutes to align with those labels. This was actually done pretty recently, and so we're one of the first states that are going to be able to go through the process to open up the statutes and be able to change and align. There's a couple year grace period to make that change in alignment. But again, this is going to be a very, very technical update, so it should move pretty well. Again, no budgetary impacts with that one. Then the next 3, we have 6. The next 3 will have some budgetary impacts. So the first one, LC4, food safety program. And if folks have any detailed questions, Rusty Rock is in the room here and can help kind of answer any technical questions. But we license all the food establishments here in Oregon. For the last couple of years, we've had a 3% inflationary kind of authority. So we raised the fees 3% every year. This was part of a conversation and negotiations around having huge fee jumps every so many years. It's kind of taken a little bit of small incremental increase. That authority sunsets. We had the sunset continue one time for 5 years. The groups that work on this are really supportive of taking away that sunset and just making it permanent. And so we will then have the continued authority to do a 3% annual fee increase to mitigate against from those big fee jumps. So really, I mean, no immediate budgetary impacts there, but moving forward, it builds in kind of stability and predictability, not only for us, but for the industries. The fifth fifth legislative concept. Then I would say the next two, are going to take a little nuancing with the budget side. So I'm just going to talk strictly to the legislative concept side. And that is a lot of our fees our fee caps are set in statute by law. And so that means that the department has the authority to make incremental updates until we hit a fee cap. And then we have to go back to the legislature and ask for those fee caps to be raised to another amount. And then we make little incremental updates as we go along until we hit those fee caps. Rinse and repeat, we keep going along on a cycle. These next two, so weights and measures and then pesticides, these next two are really going in and raising those fee caps. That doesn't mean that we are taking the fees from today to tomorrow up to those fee caps. That is, we need the growth room within the statute, through the public process, the legislative process to bless the fee cap raise, and then administratively through rule, we make those incremental updates. And so you'll see that I think they're varying degrees of jumps. The weights and measures fee increase, we're asking for about a 30% increase. Again, a 30% in the statutory cap increase. Then what we will incrementally kind of raise up there as needed. Very similar. Did number 6 not print? Oh, number 6 didn't print. We will get you number 6. Number 6 is very similar. It is pesticide registration fees. So we register about 15,000 pesticide products in Oregon, spanning from the agricultural pesticides, also to the household disinfectants, right? Your Clorox wipes, all those types of things are registered pesticides. And the cap right now is about is $400. It's not about, it is $400. The last time it was raised was in 2015. We're by $150. We're asking for another $150 increase on that cap. To go to $550, again, to administratively raise it as we need over maybe the next decade, but about that time period. So those are fee conversations are always challenging, right? And especially in this session, they're going to be a little bit more tricky. But so those are our 6 legislative concepts. Any questions around these? They're thrilling. Very technical, some of them. Okay. I would say that, these are what we work on. We also know that there's going to be thousands of bills, right? There are always thousands of bills. We track around, I think last year we had about 1,200 in our bill tracker system. And we will give everyone those, kind of our bill tracking reports as they come through. But we engage a lot on other policy. We know, I think the director mentioned earlier, right? We know canola policy is coming back up. Water policy is going to be a big conversation this session. There's going to be a lot on the table. And so as we get those known knowns, we'll continue to provide those updates in terms of what we're tracking and what we're seeing and engaging on. But it's a long session. So we start at the end of January and we'll run through basically through June. It's a 6-month session. And so that'll be the span of what we're looking at for the policy work. Any questions around policy sides before we move to budget? Okay, so as Director Sharples-Hanson mentioned, so there's kind of 3 phases to a budget process. The first phase is what we call the ARB, and yes, we love government acronyms, which is the agency request budget. That is where the agencies put together their requests for their budget going into the session. That was due September 1, August 30th, because September 1 is a Saturday. And then kind of the next processes is the governor's budget. And then that goes into the legislature. That is what all the agencies support and work off of and move towards. And then through the legislative process, through the Ways and Means process, there is generated the legislative budget, which then becomes the budget for the next 2 years. And so those are kind of the 3, I think, big milestones of the budget. Did you want to jump in? Or?
Yeah, just real quick. So the agency request budget is the opportunity for ODA to ask for additional resources. And we do that through, and you'll hear this, program option packages. Those are our asks. And it's the spot, because once the governor's budget comes out, we will support the governor's budget. We do support the governor's budget. So just this is our big opportunity.
Yep, and I think it was for folks who maybe have gone through a few budget cycles with us, you may be more familiar, and I'm looking around the room. I don't think Brian might be the only one who's gone through the previous big budget conversations with us and Louisa. And so I think in the past, and this has been made very clear, kind of through the development process, this is a very different type of a development of a budget. We used to, previous budgets was ask for everything and anything inside the budget. All the enhancements that you would want. What would it take to resource everything that you would need? This time around, there was a much more precision ask to say, effectively, here's a target number. What can you fit in? What are your priorities fitting within this target number? Within a limit. And so that is why this budget, we don't have 20 some policy option packages like we have had in the past. We have 2. And one really stayed within that target number, and we scurried off to the side with another one. But I'm going to jump. So we're on the kind of a summary sheet there, behind tab 2 in your binders. I'll set this up by saying yesterday we had a good, and part of why I came in so late yesterday was being involved in this conversation. But yesterday and other conversations, right? Nothing earth-shattering new kind of information, but the revenue forecasts happen every quarter. That is what drives the availability of funding for government. And we had a recent revenue forecast. The revenues are up. So is the cost of doing business in everywhere, right? I mean, I think all of us can relate to that, right, within the private enterprise, but in the public enterprise as well. The cost of doing businesses are way up. And so while we're not in a recessionary, kind of conditions in terms of the budget, right? Revenues are growing, everything's going up. So is the cost of doing business, and it is outpacing those revenues. And so we will be, I think, faced with a little bit of a budget reduction exercise going into the session, which even makes the conversations around adding anything that much more challenging. But we have a lot of kind of different. Well, we have all 4 major revenue streams, and so as our agency, we were balancing quite a bit here versus if we're all general fund, lottery fund, or all other funds, federal funds. And so underneath that backdrop, right, we had our target numbers, we had our kind of where we were at. And so kind of on that second page, because I'm going to let Lindsay run through pretty much everything else, but on that second page is where you see where our enhancements were. And I think the only thing that I'd add here, just really quick, is like we really focused on the strategic plan, right? And that vision that we set forward, that we all worked on, right, in April, as the board. And so really trying to look at, strengthening our core programs, right? Bringing in the organizational excellency, bringing in modernization resources to be able to not only deliver better customer service, better employee experiences, better customer experiences. And so that's really where we focused the limited resources that we had to kind of play with inside the budget. And so that, I think it aligns well with our strategic plan. However, going into this, even this, I think, is going to be under constraints. And so none of this is a guarantee, right? This is all kind of still in a very much proposal, much of a request phase. I'll hand it off to Lindsay.
Lindsay Eng from Oregon Department of Agriculture. Thank you, Chair Miller and Director Sharplow Hanson. I'm going to mostly just take, my second half of the show here. And I feel a little bit like this is a book report from the time I've gotten to spend with Deputy Director Hansen, Henderson, excuse me, since I've been back to ODA, because I've been learning a lot about how our agency works. And I came out of the Other Funds program and am coming back from the private sector. And so I think it's been, it's kind of a good place for me to be in, but I'm certainly learning a lot. And it's complicated. So I think we've seen that Deputy Director Henderson has done this for so many years that it's important to transfer that knowledge. And so hopefully we're getting it all. So I do want to reiterate what our director and what Jonathan spoke about, particularly around the Other Fund side. And one of our core focuses, it continues to be trying to strengthen our core. If you look at our last LAB, we had our Other Fund programs are about 56% of our revenues in the budget. They fund, though, our agency administration at the tune of 80%. So those programs that are bringing in fees that we levy to businesses for licenses, but also in fee-for-service programs, those are coming in and they are assessed in order to pay for the administrative functions of the agency. And so we have, this has been a long-standing issue, and I think when I was here before, and probably every agency requests budget, this is something that we are always trying to right size because it's really important. And as some of you that were able to go on the tour yesterday got to see how some of our programs depend on volume, and those millions and millions and millions of pounds of potatoes, if we don't have that revenue that comes in from those programs, then it impacts the ability to do the core functions of the agency. So I think that that's really presented here. And it's unfortunate that there's not always that much to have, right? So generally we do get instructions. We were allowed to put about 8% or 1%, excuse me, of our general fund in our asks. So that's where that number comes from for our asks. Our general fund is, not that high in our agency. We have also received general fund in other areas that are not program specific. So we've had some large grant programs, the meat grant program, so accompanied with state meat inspection. We have the meat grant program that was almost 10 million, the $5 million in farm worker housing enhancements. Our new North Valley facility, we were able to get general fund to pay for rent for our labs there. And so those have come in, but they're not necessarily building that core. So that's something that we've really been focused on. In addition to those enhancements, I think the other discussion around the budget and finances is really those fees. So we talked about the caps and where we're trying to fix those caps. In the 3 programs that we've had, I would say that we talked about food safety, weights and measures and pesticides that we're actually having to go and increase the cap. Those programs tend to be fairly fairly stable, and we don't have a lot of impact from business trends going up and down in terms of the amount of money that we're getting and licenses. However, for example, our weights and measures program, the last time we increased the fee was in 2018. So we have a 3% ability to increase it every year in statute, but we didn't do that, and we held a lot during COVID. as many did. And so we held fees steady as much as we could during COVID. We came out of COVID and we had this explosion of inflation. Our employee costs have increased over 15% since 2022. And those are compounded in our budgets, right? So it's not just one time, it's compounded. And so those costs, even our state government service charges, fleet costs, all of the cost of doing business, as you guys know, has just gone up. So and it makes it a hard discussion, but where we're really having to focus and where most of my time has been focused is trying to figure out how we can catch up and then get those other fund programs in a more consistent place where we can continue to provide the service and continue operating, frankly. So we also, in our budget process, ratify fees that we've put through where we don't have caps. So you'll see some of those are in here in terms of the budget adjustments, basically. The policy option packages are essentially everything that we are doing that has those asks or is something that's going to impact revenue. So as Jonathan talked about, and I just mentioned, that core policy 110 is really trying to support our human resources department and an emergency safety specialist with general fund. Another difference coming out of COVID is that the enterprise, the state, and all of the executive agencies have moved to a new HR system. It's great. It's a wonderful system and everyone loves it. But it has increased the administrative workload of bringing employees on, certainly seasonals. It's really increased that, being able to do timekeeping in a more complicated by hour fashion to different cost centers. So that has taken a lot of our time and we need more human resources to assist in that. So that's kind of where that's focused. Jonathan also talked about the modernization of our IT infrastructure. This is, and you'll see in the summary at the top, we have, maybe if you want to go to the top, but we have under general fund, if you look there, there's general fund debt service. So this is where we are looking to access a bonding program that the state will run of $15 million to essentially modernize and upgrade our IT infrastructure. And then if that's approved, the debt service comes out of general fund. So it's a great way to do some of these projects, and we have not accessed this opportunity yet, but Jonathan has been working really hard on it, and it's a really great opportunity if we can access it, because it's certainly something that we wouldn't be able to self-fund. And then we also have pesticides is in here, so you can see. Sorry, I'm jumping around, but you can see that the core CNT. So this is a policy package to add additional staff. This would come out of our existing pesticide registration fee, but it's to increase our training and certification programs for pesticide applicators. EPA has significantly changed and upgraded their certification and training requirements. And so this would be for us to be able to bring our state program up to those standards and kind of rewrite that educational program that we need to do. And then the rest, you'll notice these are not general fund asks. So they're kind of, a lot of them are just continuation of federal funds. So we just need to continue to ask for them in the budget. So our avian influenza, that's a federally funded thing. RFSI is a new grant program through USDA for us. We were able to get 2 staff with the program. And it's a 5-year funding program for rural infrastructure. Continuing our specialty crop block grants, continuing our work with the Food Safety Modernization Act produce safety work. And then we have some cleanup that's in here, and mostly that's just technical moving of positions around. The last thing that I'll talk about, because I think we're getting close time, or we may be over, but I just want to make sure we mention it, is we are also seeing fee increases in non-capped programs, and some of those may have the biggest impact on our budget and actually on revenue. So we've talked a little bit about the shipping point program, our commodity commission oversight program. We just have a laundry list of other fund programs that are suffering and needing to be able to increase fees in order to keep up. And the last one that I'll mention, because I think it's also important, is our organic certification program. We don't have statutory caps, but that's one of those programs where it's really important for us to be able to work with industry to come up with something that will meet their needs and allow us to be able to provide the service. Brand inspection program is also that way. We just went through a fee increase of 20 cents per head for brand inspections, but that program is still significantly impacted. And in that program, we do have statutory caps, but have not been able to raise them and weren't able to include it in our request this year. I think there's disagreement among the industry, so we're working with industry to find other ways to ensure that that program can continue. I'm going to stop here because I know that we're over, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Director, do you want to add something? Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. Thank you.
So first step in the process, incredibly complicated budget at ODA, a lot of different fund types and a lot of different variables playing into it right now in terms of driving the costs of the work that we do. I think you definitely got that message in all of this. We are continuing to look internally, not only at the fact looking for additional revenues through fee increases, but looking internally for efficiencies and evaluating all of the positions as we have opportunities to look at our programs and continue to structure or restructure as we move along. And so that'll be an ongoing conversation, I think, with all of you moving forward. But just know, first bite at the apple, limits in terms of what we could ask for. That limit is looking like it's going to be a reduction rather than a little add. And so we're preparing ourselves for those discussions. The challenge for ODA is this. I did some math. I mean, the current budget is about 31% general fund. A lot of that is one time. And when people ask me, well, you need to decide what you're not going to do. Well, what are we not going to do? Much of it's statutorily mandated. When you put a focus on public health, like food safety, there's a big chunk of general fund in food safety. It's probably not a great place to look. Natural resources are tough. Some of our toughest external issues for balancing are around natural resources. That's where we have general fund lottery funds. So they're all really hard discussions and tough decisions. And then when you talk about the other funded programs, we recognize that those hit businesses and farmers and ranchers and fishers around the state the same way that they're hitting us. And so being very cognizant of that add-on. It's not only us at ODA that are having these same other funds fee discussions impacting agriculture in Oregon. Other agencies are too. So we are very cognizant of the stacking effect. And that's why Lindsay talked about food safety. We could have done an incremental increase over time. We didn't, and we're more conservative in it, but unfortunately you pay for that on the backside. And so there's a lot of balancing, and this will be an ongoing discussion over the next, let's see, this is September, basically 9 months with all of you until the end of the legislative session as we move through it.
Thank you for that. Deputy Director Henderson.
Just very quickly, the book report went great. What Lindsay doesn't know is it's her and Jonathan's to write the next chapters. And this conversation for you, new board, it sounds a little bit overwhelming and discouraging. And I just wanted to put on the record, you have a director who knows more than I know about this subject and can put it together. That doesn't always happen in directors. They are either really strong on the policy side or they're really strong on the business side. You have a director that is balanced at both of those things. It's going to take that. I worked for a home builder, and I had a lot of jobs. I worked for a home builder going through college, and he was a start to finish home builder, which you don't find too many. One of the things he said to me and beat into my head, which I didn't really understand, was the foundation, even though it's concrete and it seems mundane, it has to be perfect. And he made me do over more than I can count places where I didn't quite get it right. And the reason why he said that is that if you screw up here, the cabinets are not going to hang right and the doors are going to be open. That's what this is about. Getting the foundation stronger, better, so that everything that gets built on top of it has a foundation. And I think that's where we're at today. Rebuilding is okay. Reassessing is okay. And we've done it several times in our agency. So I just wanted to leave you all with that. Lindsay and Lisa and Jonathan, I'm just 5 miles away. And happy to offer whatever's in my brain or left there, but they'll do great. Thank you.
Wow, thank you for that wisdom. We're going to miss you, buddy. Thank you. Let's just say this too, Jonathan, obviously you've been on this spot for a while and done beautifully. Lindsay, thank you. This is a fun new ride you're on, so appreciate your leadership. And for the new board members, in our strategy, core was priority, because we do all these things for all these people and try to meet all of the various needs, and sometimes you forget about that foundation that Deputy Director talked about, and we're focused on the foundation now. It's not sexy or neat or whatever to be able to say, hey, we need this money, but boy, if we don't get this right, we're not going to be where we need to be. So thank you, the two of you, and thank you, Deputy Director and Director, for your efforts here. We've got a ways to go before June 30th. So thanks. Any questions at all? Okay, we are moving on. Thank you, guys, which I don't know if, Jonathan, you're going to stay up here.
Isaac's on.
Oh, Isaac, wonderful. I wasn't sure you were going to make it. Thank you.
Good morning.
So over to the next agenda item is our natural resource initiative. So Jonathan, thanks for rallying and joining us.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah. Isaac, thank you for rallying and joining us. I'm looking at you, Isaac, and I'm saying Jonathan. So, great. Do you want to?
We look similar, so it's okay.
Okay.
Chair Miller, Director Sharkle Hanson, board members, John Sanders, Department of Ag. I know we were switching subjects here. Isaac is home sick, kind of under the weather, and so I'm going to take kind of the driving seat for right now on the presentation. Isaac is going to be there for a lot of questions, corrections, additions, right? Because I won't get this perfect. And then also lucky to have Shannon in the room too, who can, also help fill in where in the room gaps may exist. And so this will kind of be a team effort, and hopefully again, informal, so please ask questions. I might resort to the Socratic method if we don't get any questions, but we'll kind of keep going from there. So did you want to jump in?
Yeah, if I could just do a little setup. So this presentation, I think, is really timely and incredibly important for this area. Related to the lower Umatilla groundwater management area. We've talked about it a little bit over time. This will give you hopefully kind of an in-depth review of what it is, where it's at, and what's going on, and helping us as we look forward to paving a path forward here in the area. So I would just encourage you with questions to weigh in, because this is a great opportunity for us to do a little bit of thinking out loud together and answering questions. And then I feel like it's a double bonus for us having the deputy director from DEQ with us to, and her expertise, because ultimately the groundwater management area is under the authorities of the Department of Environmental Quality and the Environmental Quality Commission. Ag is responsible for agriculture's contribution. And so that's where we come in terms of helping to protect the resource.
Yeah, and I will just say good morning, everyone. Sorry I can't be there in person. Chair Miller, members of the board, Isaac Stapleton, Natural Resource Program Director. But I don't think you want what I have, so I'm not sharing. But yeah, Lisa's right. We talked earlier about some of the stickier issues are in the natural resources side of our house, and so this is a great opportunity to explore a couple of those that are recent and active in what we're working on. So, Jonathan, are you going to take the first kind of section? Is that what the plan is?
Yep,
Okay.
I'll go, and then I'll call you in when I need it, or jump on in when appropriate. But I know how it's not easy trying to give a presentation when you're sick and virtual and all these factors. So we'll work on through this. So I think we'll set it up here with the first slide. There's going to be kind of two main parts to this. One is, I think, kind of giving a good update around Senate Bill 85 and some of the recent changes to the CAFO permits, which I know will, a few folks around here will have maybe some good direct questions about, or additions to the conversation. And then we'll go into kind of like the LUBGWAMA engagement and strategy. And this is, I think I would really emphasize here too. It's like we are in the process of, almost active brainstorming, and we're looking to all of you to also be some of these, thought partners, advisors, right, for us through this process. And so, as we go through this, right, not only think about exactly what we're talking about, right, think about the broader, kind of impacts, implications, right, kind of all these things that, we know what we know, and we're really going to start, right, trying to use this time and space to bring these types of conversations to you all, and hopefully have this good dialogue, having these thought partners, right, being able to, you all go back into your communities, right, think through these things, and just continue to expand who we're able to work some of these issues through with. So that's going to be a lot on the LUBGWAMA stuff. The CAFO stuff is really much kind of an update, but obviously we'll welcome any kind of conversation, questions, those types of things. So if we go to the next slide, so I think kind of just do a quick, either a quick reminder, overview of Senate Bill 85. This was a significant and major policy bill out of the 2023 legislative session that made some pretty major changes to the CAFO program here in Oregon. It's a little bit of a balance of things that we were already doing, kind of codified it into law, and then also some new pieces. It was signed obviously back in July of 23, kind of out, as that process goes along, but kind of within that legislative process, right, there's substantial rulemaking, right? The policy bills come out into statute, which is the law, and then agencies do rulemaking. Sometimes it's pretty simple, sometimes it's quite a bit. And so this, we undertook a lot of rulemaking with this policy bill. I think, you know, we had multiple kind of RACs, which are rules advisory committees, which tend to be, you know, more focused constituencies to help us think through some of the rules. And then there's always kind of a long, lengthier public comment process in which we take in a bunch of public comments. We closed the public comment process for Senate Bill 85 on July 22nd of this year. And so, I mean, you can see from really effective date from signing by the governor to end of public comment rulemaking was almost a full year. So it's a long process. And then we expect to finalize these rules later this month. And so then, you know, these will become effective, and we'll be working through kind of, you know, how to move out permits and applications underneath Senate Bill 85 structures. There was a lot to it. We're not going to go through every piece of Senate Bill 85 today. I think we're just going to hit the big points that came out during the rulemaking process and or during public comment. But obviously, if there's, you know, if there's something that we didn't touch on that folks want to talk about or have questions that you might have heard about, you know, please, we'll have that interaction. But just to know, this is not going to be a walkthrough of the entire policy.
Yeah, Jonathan, the one thing I would add is part of the reason this rulemaking took so long is we also use it as an opportunity to look at basically every single rule that's in Chapter 74 and make sure that it was clear, understandable for the regulated community. So there's some minor changes that aren't related to Senate Bill 85, and there's some that are not so minor, and we'll talk about one of those later in terms of a definition. But yeah, we really took a full look at what our rules say and how we implement the program.
So next slide there. So one of the big, I think one of the big changes in 85 that kind of has an overarching look is around kind of the new definitions. And this came up in rulemaking, this came up in public comment. So we're going to, you know, kind of take a little bit of time here to walk through them. But I would say there's, you know, through the policy bill, there was really an attempt to bifurcate kind of what a new CAFO is, and then what an expanding, you know, CAFO would be. And so when we're looking at what a new CAFO is, you know, right out of the policy bill, it's really looking at, you know, almost a parcel of land which no CAFO has been previously operated on. And we've taken that, I'm just trying to see if I'm jumping slides here, but I don't think I am, but we've taken that really to mean that there's been no CAFO permit issued to that parcel of land before. And so that is what kind of that consideration of the new CAFO is. Now, there's new CAFO and new large, because in the policy bill, there's distinguishing factors between if you're just a new CAFO or if you're a new large, then there's some kind of additional pieces that gets triggered. But in terms of what that means, that's what the large or the new components are. And then expanding is really, you know, I think the direction here was really looking at there are now the tier, you know, the kind of the size tiers of CAFOs, so small, medium, large, tier 1, tier 2s. And that is really if you're moving between those tiers, right? So if you're expanding within the permit to where now you have more capacity than what your tier had, and you're moving into a different category, that's expanding. Recognizing too that there was there's kind of a there's no real after the top tier, there was no extra tier to consider an expansion. And so the legislature put in, if you're going 20% greater than what you would be permitted under if you're in that top tier already, then you're considered the expanding large. And again, there's some kind of additionality components within the structure there. So I think really just trying to make sure that that we've clarified that the new bucket is really looking at what a new CAFO is, and it's clear in the policy bill that it's, hasn't been permitted on an operation before, and then expanding is the expansion about moving the tiers. So those are the definitions. Why those are important, right, is they drive a lot of kind of, it shows where folks are subject to different types of different types of requirements and compliance. So that's why we're spending a bit of time on those. So if we go to the next slide, I think so. This is one where Isaac was talking about. We really took an opportunity to look at this holistically, to take a holistic approach in terms of saying, okay, since we are dealing with a lot of CAFO kind of requirements and really looking at this program as a holistic piece versus just like what you have to do with Senate Bill 85. What other parts of clarification points can we make? What other pieces can we help, really support folks in setting them up for success? And so I think there was a lot of, there wasn't great clarity in terms of kind of when folks were in or out of being a CAFO or not, especially when you're on kind of maybe the smaller side of the scale. And so we looked at the existing kind of the definition of what a confined feeding operation is, or what a CAFO means in terms of needing this permit. And so we added a few pieces here to really kind of hope, to clarify in terms of, I think the hours and day limit, kind of the time limits of confining, and then also really clarifying around like the wastewater control and facilities of saying basically 100 gallons a day or more of liquid manure, then that kind of puts you into this, will help folks, I think, understand, where you are and are not, needing a CAFO permit.
Elon Muller, for the record, was this the veterinary issue that came up as far as definitional? There was some concern from the veterinary community, because again, some have animals held for a period of time while they're sick. Did that influence this piece?
Yeah, Chair Miller, the Isaac Stapleton. So one of the things that this does is provide more clarity for the people who have smaller number of animals or aren't holding them for certain periods of time, so that they can clearly see, do I need a permit or do I not? And so this will clear it up for those vets. Likely they won't meet this definition unless these specific conditions are met, like around generating 100 gallons of wastewater a day of liquid manure. Like those types of things, they're not likely to trigger, so they likely will not fall under that. Now it's going to be case by case in terms of how size their operation and other things they may be doing, but likely this solves that question for a lot of folks, not just vets, but like some dog kennels, some smaller, just folks milking some goats, or 4-H folks. Like, do I need it? Do I not? And this is our attempt to really be clear about what it means to feed and hold animals. For what time period, how much liquid waste, do I need to be concerned about? And then being really clear that this new definition, if you don't meet it, you still fall under the Ag Water Quality Compliance Program. So it's not like there's no regulation or things that people need to consider about how they're managing the waste, but it just means if you need a permit or not. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Yeah, and a lot of that motive, like a lot of the focus there was really to try to delineate, okay, when are you underneath the Ag Water Quality Program, or when are you, kind of in the permit side of the equation. So next slide, I think then another piece that is new, that is a little different. It's kind of a pre-application consultation with the agencies, and the agencies being ODA, DEQ, and OWRD, and really just trying to. So when basically, and this is why we have those differentiating definitions. So when you're looking at the new large, or the expanding large. It's really having the conversation with the agencies. And so this was really kind of born out of trying to make sure that folks were coming to the table with all the information that was needed, and trying to help people be a little bit more set up on the front end for success. And so we didn't go through a lot of, back and forth, engaging of the public, right? And just maybe having some miscommunications along the way in terms of expectations and what's needed, what's not needed, especially when facilities might be going into, a different kind of scale of operation. And so it's really just trying to focus on that. The agencies know kind of what their plans are, and have some good visibility and conversations into that. And then also for the folks on the ground to understand, okay, here are kind of all the requirements, here are all the things. And so we're setting it up. And so we had these frequently, but this just formalizes that process in terms of being able to help and have those conversations.
Jonathan, we might want to speed this part up,
Oh, yep.
because otherwise we are not going to get through the Love Guamo, which was a big part of what we wanted to talk about. So thank you.
We'll click through it. Other new kind of conversations here. The next slide is just neighbor noticing for new large operations. Pre-population, so I'm going to the next slide. Pre-population inspections, this was something that we had been doing beforehand, but basically saying if you're building a new facility, we need to come out and do kind of a site inspection before you bring animals on, just to make sure that everything's ready to go. We don't have compliance issues that weren't foreseen. And then on the water supply plan, next slide, the water supply plan, it's something that we were kind of doing a little bit informally, but really codified into it to say, is there a sufficient legal source of water, for the CAFO to operate on, and really kind of making sure that there's coordination between the agencies on this to be able to set it up. Next slide. This one is a little bit, I think, a little bit trickier, but so for existing CAFOs, the stock water exemption remains intact. But for new CAFOs, there is a stock water exemption limit of 12,000 gallons per day in terms of what can be used for stock watering. And this provision does sunset in 27, but this was part of the overall component of Senate Bill 85, looking at at the stock water and the water availability pieces of it. It also kind of goes into the supply plan for new CAFOs. Are you sticking within this, or where else are we in sources water?
Hey, Jonathan, just really quick.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Josh.
Is that regardless of size? I'm Josh Zielinski, for the record. Yeah.
And so if you need over 12,000, then you have to have an identified legal source of water to continue to go on beyond the exemption.
Yeah, if you are new or you're a new large, if you meet either of those definitions, then this condition applies to you. The other thing I was going to mention just really quickly on the previous slide around the water supply plan, that provision in 85 gives Oregon Water Resources Department the ability to ask for additional conditions into the permit for metering and record keeping around water use. So we may see that as a request from WRD on new permits, that they want to see metering on the different source uses. So that's a new thing that may hit our permits depending on requests from OWRD.
So then I think we'll kind of talk about the next two, maybe in tangent here, but the first slide here, the individual permits. Kind of transitioning a little bit into the GWAMA world starts here, but really looking at where there's GWAMA designations. The LUB GWAMA, right, is the Lower Umatilla Basin GWAMA. There are other GWAMAs, right, groundwater management areas in Oregon, and so really looking at when those designations for new large CAFOs, they'll all be on individual permits versus the general permit. If you want to know more about that, we can talk later. between the distinction between general and individual. The next slide there is a nutrient application permit. This really applies again to folks inside iguanas. And I think the simplest way to say this is it's really trying to build a kind of a chain of custody of where the manure is being applied. If it's not inside your CAFO permit, if it's going to another operator within a guama, then just trying to make sure that there's a little bit of a chain of custody there, and nutrient management. This will be kind of we will still. This is still in the development or process of being developed. There's going to be rulemaking around this. So I would say this part's a little bit separate from the rulemaking that's going into effect this month. And so if this is something that you think is more of an interest, like let's have these conversations, because this is an ongoing process, and we'll kind of have a separate piece. Additional sections. There was a little bit about kind of air quality that was linked a little bit to EPA work that DEQ would report out 180 days after EPA finalizes a study, and then there's a land use nexus there, which I know can be which I know has gotten a lot of attention, but is outside of our rulemaking piece, and so really we just wanted to focus on the rulemaking side of it today, but can certainly talk to you about it. Quick summary of changes, but I think that we talked through each one of those. It's just a kind of a good chart to reference back to and have on the record for referrals. So hopefully we're speeding up so we have enough time. And so we will now transition to kind of the LABWAMA around the engagement here. And I think I'm going to lean a little bit on Isaac here to set this all up, as he's been heavily involved in the setup side, and then I can kind of come on to the, really what we're thinking part of it. So.
Perfect. Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah. So again, Isaac Stapleton. Can you go back to the other slide just really quick? So really, I wanted to set up some framework around the history of the guama from a very high level, and then really talk about how ODA and other agencies are starting to engage more directly on this issue. Some of that relates to the state nitrate reduction plan, which you may have heard about briefly, which is close to being final and shared with the public, and then really thinking about how is our non-point, our ag water quality program engaging, and what additional program changes or updates or growth do we need to see in that. And I think you may hear me say a couple of times, it's not if we need to address our rules, but it's what those rules should look like. And so we'll talk a bit about that towards the end. So next slide. So the Groundwater Quality Protection Act was put in 1989. The LABWAMA was already a documented area of contamination related to nitrates, and so it was rapidly designated as a groundwater management area and has been in place since 1990. That, right, I'll show a map in a minute, but it impacts multiple communities, lots of people, many of them relying on drinking water wells for their drinking water. And so that's Hermiston, Boardman, Irrigan, Stanfield, and Echo, kind of all in that big area. In 2020, EPA received a petition under the Safe Drinking Water Act to address endangerment to the public due to the nitrates. And since that EPA has received that petition, the state has been heavily engaged with EPA in that response and how we're addressing groundwater nitrates in this region. Further, Morrow County in 2022 did a state of emergency to bring further attention and resources into the area to get people clean drinking water. And then, today we've progressed to the point where the state as a whole is putting together a nitrate reduction plan, which I'll touch on a few of its components, but since it's not completely final, I don't have that plan yet to share with you, but it should be out by the end of September. And we'll share it with the board when that does happen. Next slide. So I mentioned agency coordination. The primary agencies that are engaging in this space is obviously ODA, DEQ, OWRD, OHA, and then with our federal partners in EPA. Like I said, since that petition came, we've been meeting with EPA on a quarterly basis to lean in and explain how the agency, what our current authorities are, how we're approaching this, what we're doing, what we can change, and that's been really great actually for all of our agencies to come together in this collaborative engagement way and make a lot of progress. So I think we don't always see that in government, and I think this has been a really positive example of how we can do that and do that well. The development of the nitrate reduction plan, there's these 4 basic components to it. So there's a section that really talks about that collaborative governance and our each distinct authorities that intersect and overlap and how we approach those. Then we really go into a section that talks about the individual strategies by source. So one source I think we'll lean on primarily today is the irrigated ag sector. What does that look like? How do we want to approach strategies for reducing that? What are our existing programs, and are they still functioning well? And what are we doing creatively, I guess, within our authorities? And then there's, monitoring, data, and analysis. That's going to be key to see, are these strategies effective? And then certainly the public health component, which is primarily OHA's around safe drinking water strategies. The other thing in this region that's really important and has put a lot of effort over these 30-odd years around addressing this issue is the LGWAMA committee. So by statute, when a GWAMA is created, a committee is created of local individuals to help advise the agencies on what should be done, what voluntary measures or what additional changes to programs should happen. In April, the agency directors were out in the region and met with community members and really reinforced our stance that we are going to take a more active leadership role in this space. And so we've been a part of those committees for the last 30-odd years, but really stepping in to be co-leads between DEQ, OWRD, and ODA with that committee to move the ball forward, so to speak. Next slide. So again, just a little bit more on the state nitrate reduction plan. Like I said, it's anticipated to be released at the end of the summer. The governor's asked for it by the end of the summer, and we're really close to having that final. It will be a living document, right? So this is an initial strategy. We're going to implement some things and then monitor over time, and there are likely going to need to be changes. So this is the first one of probably many versions of our nitrate reduction plan going forward. Sorry, just a second. And so like in our plan, there are certain things that we've said that are shorter term and that are helping to inform future actions. Like we talk about our strategic implementation areas. I think the board's heard about these before, but basically those are a targeted compliance effort in our water quality program. And typically those look at surface waters. This SIA in the LGWAMA is specifically looking at how we can use that model to get data and around groundwater contamination, and how do we provide technical assistance to folks? Can we get an inventory of irrigation practices, and then where can we put efforts to improving those practices so we're not pushing nitrates through the soil profile? Setting up standard nutrients and irrigation management plans for folks. So those are some of the components that are in that will continue to develop and grow over time. Next slide. So I promised a map. Here's the map. This is the blue outline is the boundary of the groundwater management area. And then you can see color coded by source or use of the region for ag. So the yellow is all irrigated ag that would be under the oversight of our Ag Water Quality Compliance Program. The green is circles that are covered under a CAFO permit, and then the blue is ag circles that are part of the DEQ land application permit for Port of Morrow water. Next slide. So just really quickly to give context around point sources. So it says 3. I'm only actually talking about 2 point sources, so that's a slide error. But so there's the CAFO program. We've got 13 permitted CAFOs in the region. And then we're working, obviously, you know, the new bill around Senate Bill 85. We already touched on that and its impacts to Guamas and our desire to align our permits more with DEQ wastewater permits. So there's discussions back and forth between ODA and DEQ about how we better do that. And then DEQ has 7 wastewater reuse permits. And if I got any of that wrong, Shannon can correct me. Next slide. So shifting to the non-point source discussion. So we currently have regulations over non-point sources. That's our Ag Water Quality Compliance Program. At its very core is the requirement that no one shall pollute waters of the state. That includes nitrates getting into groundwater. And the ODA has developed area rules and plans for 38 management areas across the state. The La Guama contains 2 of those management areas, and that's the Umatilla and Willow Creek. And so I'll talk in the next slide about kind of what those say. So this is the statute, and then if you go to the next slide, we'll talk about the rule just really quickly. So the Umatilla rules were established in 1999, and the Willow Creek rules were in 2003. And they both basically say the same things in slightly different ways. But basically, no crop nutrient application can impact waters of the state. That would be considered pollution. But what it doesn't say is like what that real speed limit is, or how a grower is to know or look at that. We just have a flat prohibition of pollution. Next slide. So some of the current challenges with the rules being written as they are is, right, it's a bit of an underdeveloped oversight and verification of compliance for groundwater. We're using the SIA as a targeted compliance mechanism right now, but there's limitations to that in terms of what growers are already doing on the ground or information we can ask for. There's also no non-point source like formal connection with the Ag Water Quality Program like there is in other programs, like in the point source, right? There's a direct connection with the CAFO program because those folks have a permit. That's not the case in the Ag Water Quality Program. And then there's, you know, potential data gaps around the impacts. So we know generally, right, irrigated ag uses nitrogen to grow crops. It's a beneficial use. There's crop utilization. That's how we have ag production. But how much and where are we losing some of that and impacting groundwater? That's a bit of a data gap. Next slide.
So I think, Isaac, I can pick up from here if you want to give your throat a rest there. And so I think, right, so this is really where we're going into what else can be done, right? What else are we able to do? And I'd say, like, we have broad authorities to do a lot. Resourcing is another topic, right? But, you know, through Senate Bill 1010, like, there was broad authorities provided to look at these types of things. And so this is really looking at, okay, how do we go from really being focused on the surface water component of water quality and start looking at then at groundwater. And so, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I want to jump in real quick. So there are a couple of things I think I want to make sure the board, this is like all about foundation, right? Clarity on. So groundwater, we've heard groundwater limited, that's volume, basically water quantity available down below. Groundwater management area, that's water quality. So think about contamination and how do we prevent contamination, or how do we clean up contamination? Two different, easy to get mixed up. The other thing I think is really important to think about in context of the conversation and kind of the slides that you just heard. There are several different types of regulation in place around agriculture in this region that relates to water quality. You have the permitted facilities for DEQ using reuse water out of food processing. You have permitted facilities under the Confined Animal Feeding Operation Program that ODA has. And then you have regulated facilities under the Ag Water Quality Act. That would be irrigated agriculture. And we don't have as much information there, but it's under our current Ag Water Quality Program. Another piece of context, Ag Water Quality Program. Our Ag Water Quality Program, we are very familiar with dealing with surface water issues, right? And surface water pollution. You can see it. Groundwater, it's much more challenging. This is the first time into it. We can't see it. We don't necessarily have great data in terms of how do you measure it? How do you measure the impacts of the activities above the ground down into the groundwater? So those are some of the challenges and principles, like if I could just capture it for you all to do that whole level setting that we're struggling with and working through, and I think producers here are getting their heads around as well. You know, how do we work through some of this with just a little bit of definitional clarification for all of you?
So, yeah, and it's never easy to develop new rules, new regulations, new compliance standards, and especially I think given all those factors that the director laid out too, it's even more challenging when it's when we're going in on in a new space. I think for a lot of us, and even for the nationwide, right? We're not the only spot in this country that has this type of a groundwater component, and there's a lot of groups out there trying to work through this simultaneously. So this is there's just a lot of moving pieces to it, and so as we look through, right, what are those principles for the program development, right? Making sure it's reasonable, meaningful, scaling, the scalability of it, and so that way folks can, we're really trying to help folks be set up for success, in terms of those compliance pieces. Phased in implementation, right? We can't just go from really having nothing clearly defined to having something super defined and expecting people to be ready to go. And so what does that on-ramping look like? What is the technical assistance? What does the support look like to help people be successful? And then know what kind of be able to plan around what it is. And so that way then when the longevity pieces kick in, that there's a good understanding of kind of expectation setting and and goal meaning. This process is going to have a lot of, partner engagement, partner work. We've begun those conversations. They are continuing right here today. And then really, the science-based, the ability to defend it, to back it, to measure it, to be able to demonstrate, that what we're doing is going to achieve its goals and be meaningful. So we go to the next slide. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and I think the other thing that's good to know is that our existing authorities that are granted to us through our statutes, we have the ability to move forward in this manner. So it's not a question of needing to seek a legislative concept. You don't see one in the presentation earlier. So it's really about what we need to implement in this space and how we go about it.
So kind of the major tenets, right, around what would be in program development, and it's really trying to put the farm management decisions, keep that with the producer, right? Not not necessarily getting in the way of those decision-making processes, but also just trying to help, set them up for success and compliance and recognizing kind of the broader picture that we're all moving towards. Right, a real focus kind of on that nutrient irrigation management to mitigate any additionality in terms of nitrates that might be reaching the groundwater, right? So looking at not only the nitrate itself, but then also the vehicle that moves it, and trying to make sure that folks understand those relationships and that there's enough, assistance and ability to nuance those connectivities. And so we're really trying to mitigate then the additionality piece of it. And then, as Isaac alluded to, right, really trying to establish those, the direct relationships with those producers to ensure compliance, to help make sure that the program, one, is successful, but then two, that we're having that relationship with the producers. So this is kind of the last slide of content. So next slide is really looking at, the elements of of kind of where our headspace is, what we're thinking about. You want to jump in?
Yeah, I think proposed is a big word on this one. I think I would say concepts that are being discussed. It's not a matter of if we're going to have to do something in this region around regulation, we will. It's what and how. And so I would change that to be the concepts that we have been discussing kind of with the statewide organizations and in the region and the meetings that we've been having, trying to get our heads around what we could do, how do we measure it, and what's workable in the region.
And so I think the image there on the side is to just, I think, try to build an analogy here, right, of like the speed limits, right? There's speed limits on the road. You can't drive, intoxicated, right? There are rules of the road, but kind of the latitude and the ability to say, what are you going to drive? How much are you going to push those limits, right? And maybe there's some consequences, right? Those types of things. And so really looking at that kind of really kind of logical analogy. And so what we have been looking at is saying, okay, let's look at the soil profile, right? Where the nitrogen, where the nutrients are moving through, where the crop, where the root zones are, what the uptake is, knowing that all of the soil profiles are a little bit different, the cropping patterns are a little different, right? Year to year is a little different, right? And so is there, can we find a certain gradient of acceptable level of kind of the residual nitrogen nutrients left over, post harvest after uptake, that then we can look at and say, either you're too high, you're right in the right zone, right, or you kind of need to slow down here, and really just trying to make sure then that the producers have the time to be able to respond to that, right, make the changes that they're needed to, and be able to really try to keep those residual nitrogen levels in the soil at a certain level to where we're mitigating the impact of the groundwater. That's going to be coupled with some record keeping, management plans that we can say, hey, you're a little too high here. Let's adjust. Let's work together on a management plan, either on water movement or nutrient movement, right? Soil testing to find that, and then auditing, right? And then we, being able to go through and audit those records and audit, where folks are at. To help ensure compliance. And these are taking elements from existing programs that we have. It's a little bit from pesticides, a little bit from our CAFO programs, right? A little bit from ag water quality, and kind of putting them into something that folks would be familiar with, and hopefully be able to navigate at a pretty quick level. But then also, again, that phased implementation of technical assistance, right? We have to be able to help set people up for success. We have to be able to have kind of a good roadmap to bring people into compliance, because we know what we know, and folks know what they know, and it's and being able to try to build that relationship, build those understandings, building that knowledge base is important for ongoing success. And so I think that's kind of where I'll end. Isaac, Lisa, everybody else can kind of jump in.
So I'll jump in because I want to make sure we get a couple of minutes for questions, and we're bouncing up against a break as well and public comment. I think this is the beginning of a conversation. I want to frame it up as that. We've been in conversations and are continuing conversations in the local community. Some, those will continue. We are starting and having ongoing conversations with the statewide ag organizations. We are working collaboratively across agencies, trying to figure out how we get our heads around this. And we're trying, I think, in principle, to find a path forward that gives us the information and the data we need, and to assure that the practices on top of the ground aren't pushing nitrates down into the water and continuing to add to a problem that needs to be cleaned up, and using things that are familiar to ag. I think, when we've talked about it a little bit, thinking about in that certification type realm, how do you do it with the tools that agriculture is familiar with? So I will pause there, and I think let's have some conversation.
Yeah, we are at the break, so I guess a question would be, we can continue and you can break as you wish. We do need to make sure we start our public comment at 10:40. Or I might suggest, but we'd have to have Isaac rejoin us and maybe Deputy Director. I want to make sure that we have time, so maybe we can, let's take a 5-minute bio break, get back, and then if we have a time for a few questions, we'll do the public comment, and then we can kind of maybe do some other adjustments to make sure we have time for the discussion and questions, because I know I have quite a few. Okay, quick break till 11. Oh, geez. Sorry about that, guys. I guess we'll just do 10:40. left my new phone. I have on Do Not Disturb and it rings. Miller, for the record. We have 3 folks signed up for public comment. And again, I'll just remind everyone, especially that have signed up for public comment, really appreciate that you're taking the time. But we do have a limit of 3 minutes per presentation. And I believe some of you were able to provide some written comments too that was very helpful to basically supplement what you're going to say. So I'll mention the list here. First on the list is Mike McCarthy, second on the list, Samantha Bayer, third on the list, and hopefully I won't butcher this too badly, Catherine Jernstedt. So we'll kick it off with Mike McCarthy from Ag for Oregon. Mike, the floor is yours.
All right, I think I'm coming on here. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right, very good. Thank you for the opportunity to comment, Board of Ag and staff of the Oregon Department of Agriculture. I appreciate this opportunity. I grow fruit. I'm a fruit grower in Parkdale, grow apples, pears, and cherries, and have some cattle and manage some forest land. And I would like to comment today on behalf of Ag for Oregon, which is a group of farmers and ranchers and forest landowners from all areas of the state who want to continue to grow food and fiber and plants into the future. We're very concerned about the farmland losses that are occurring in Oregon. And it's really surprising how much land we are losing. We're actually losing more as a percent than the state of California. So that's quite disturbing. We also are very concerned about the number of non-farm and non-production uses occurring on farmland and the number of conditional uses. And we're really concerned about these because they're taking farmland out of production. But really, more importantly, they're interfering with our ability to farm in the farm zone. It's an exclusive farm use zone. That's why we bought property there. That's why we try to farm there. Exclusive farm use zone. And it's getting really difficult, particularly in areas like Hood River, where we have a lot of other things going on in the farm zone. It's getting really difficult to move your equipment, to move people around. A lot of trespass going on, and it's a very significant problem. But even a bigger problem, I think, is the long-term effect of prices on farmland going into the future. What we're seeing is skyrocketing prices. One realtor told an appraiser that he wants to see every conditional use possible, every potential conditional use added on to the price of the appraisal. So that's what we're seeing is all these conditional non-production uses, the value of those are being added on to the price of farmland. Essentially what it means is it's a rezoning of farmland. And what we're seeing to a commercial use and then commercial pricing. And what we're seeing here in Hood River is farmland prices as much as $200,000 per acre because of all the venue facilities that have been added to them. And that's not an exaggeration, $200,000 per acre. So how is some young person going to buy that really is interested in food production? I understood this was supposed to be a food production zone, and we're getting way away from that. And I think it's really unfortunate. So I'm probably out of time, but I appreciate the opportunity to comment. Thank you.
Mike, just on time. Thank you very much for your comments. Really appreciate it. Samantha Bayer.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. For the record, my name is Samantha Bayer. I am General Counsel of the Oregon Property Owners Association, and I'm also here representing the Keep Oregon Farming campaign. We submitted some detailed comments into the record with a proposed red line to Resolution 314 I would ask all members of the board to please review that. I just wanted to quickly touch on a couple of things today that I had read and other comments and have heard so far today. First, one of the things I wanted to address is this idea that if we're talking about agritourism, that should go in the agritourism resolution and not in the resolution that we submitted the red line on. I would urge the board not to do that and to make sure that when they are adopting resolution 314, they are specifically making note of agritourism, because one, that's a broad bucket term, but that includes several non-farm uses that are allowed in the EFU zone. So if you have two separate resolutions on the issue that aren't considered together, you could potentially have conflicting resolutions. So my suggestion is to make sure that when you're looking at 314, you are definitely considering agritourism in that. The second thing I wanted to address is something that Mr. McCarthy just said, which I've heard repeatedly of concern about land prices and the barriers that might have for folks who are younger and trying to get into the ag space. I just want the board to realize that we have a land affordability crisis throughout Oregon. That's why we have a housing crisis inside the urban growth boundary. It is the value of land is increasing drastically, and the ag land is not an exception. They are a part of that rule, and actually agricultural land continues to be the least expensive land in the state. And that's not to say that we don't have a concern about how would we get young folks into ag. We certainly do. But I think the idea that the government would be involved in some way to artificially cap the price of land, or might adopt policies that would prevent current property owners from increasing the value of their property and making use of their property is a somewhat untenable solution to a problem that we're dealing with across the state. And then last, the other thing I wanted to quickly address is that through the Keep Oregon Farming campaign and with my organization, we are representing numerous farmers around the state who participate in agritourism or other non-farm uses as a way to increase the amount of income they have during this really challenging time. There's testimony on the record that explains that. I have heard and seen in some other comments this idea that they are maybe hobby farmers or trying to do get rich quick schemes, and this kind of sentiment that people who do agritourism or who do those things aren't real farmers. And I just, again, direct the board back to the press release that Secretary Vilsack released after the last ag census. I think that type of ideology is not only antiquated, but it's regressive. And it's the exact kind of go big or get out mentality that is actually driving farms out of business. We need to do things to support farmers economically right now. We're not losing farmland, we're losing farmers. And so I just ask the board to be leaders in this space and to note that certain non-farm uses, while they might have impacts, while they might not be traditional farming, are a lifeline to keeping farms in business right now. And folks are really looking to ODA to be a leader in this space and provide that support to farmers who are going through very difficult economic times. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Samantha, thank you for that. We're unfortunately out of time, but appreciate that. And I think we've noted the comments that you had submitted as well as others. So appreciate that. Catherine, if I mispronounce your last name, please forgive me and give me the right pronunciation.
This is Catherine Jernstead. Can you hear me or see me or none of the above?
Both.
Okay. Again, it is Jernstead. Good morning, commissioners. My name's Catherine Jernstead, and I'm commenting today regarding Resolution 314 on behalf of the Jernstead Century Farm and the Jernstead Daughters Farm in Carlton, Oregon. In 1958, my father, Ernest Jernstead Jr., was appointed to the State Board of Agriculture by Governor Mark Hatfield and reappointed by Governor Tom McCall. Dad credited Oregon's land use system with making it possible to hold the farm intact in the face of generational change and resist the impact of land speculation. My hope is that this system will allow us to hold the farm intact for the 5th, 6th, and generations to come. There have been innumerable highs and lows in agriculture since my great-grandparents set up farming in Yamhill County in the 1880s. Crops fall in and out of favor and profitability. Families struggle through or move on in many cases. Undergirding it all is that agriculture is a business which operates with a long-term perspective. As such, it needs to be adequately capitalized with a business plan based on the realities of soil, water, and market conditions. Unfortunately, we're seeing a marked influx of buyers who are drawn to the picturesque image of agriculture without understanding the complexities of the business or completing their due diligence. A specific property may not support the crop or livestock envisioned by a new buyer, but that does not mean it does not have high value for appropriate crop use. Allowing development for non-farm hospitality and entertainment purposes is a mistake. It removes value from our commercial farmland base and drives up ag land prices. Once developed, non-farm uses rarely convert back. I do not presume to know which buyers thought that they could make a go of farming and only turn to tourism to stave off financial ruin. But there are clearly growing numbers of investor groups buying up land, always planning to leverage it for tourism. The resulting proliferation of non-farm uses on EFU land is creating conflicts with those who are committed to employing the land for farm use, as envisioned and defined in Oregon state land use policy and statewide planning goals. Since these non-farm uses are not dependent on soil type, they should be located in our cities and towns. They would benefit from these commercial activities within their urban growth boundaries. No one said farming was going to be easy or even always profitable. This can be said of every business. What sets farming apart is the essential element of protecting the soil upon which it rests. We must strengthen the protection of agriculture in EFU zones as envisioned in Oregon's 1973 Senate Bill 100. We strongly support proposed improvements to strengthen those protections and Resolution 314. I've also submitted a more lengthy written comments, but I don't know how timely it was. Thank you for the opportunity to comment here. Any questions?
Great, Catherine. Just for making sure I'm doing the chairman, we don't do questions, do we, in this time frame, or do we? We take comments only. So thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, all three of you, for your focus on 314. There'll be a recommendation for next steps that'll be coming from our subgroup that have been working on this for the full board's discussion and consideration tomorrow afternoon during our business session. So thank you. Great. So while we still have our Deputy Director from DEQ here, and thank you again for coming all this way for this, we will open it up into any additional questions or comments in regards to, I'd like to maybe concentrate it on the Guamo. We could certainly go back to the CAFO discussion, but I think it's important from because we're here in particular, and I think this is a lot of new news for us. So I will open it up to the board for any comments, questions. Wow. Why? Go. Yeah.
So,
Director.
It might be great to just see if the Deputy Director from DEQ would like
Any
to
comments?
Just a couple comments.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Yes.
Chair Miller, Director Hansen, again, thank you for invitation here. I think a couple of things. One is from my perspective, from DEQ perspective, we understand completely that this needs to be a collaborative partnership, that that no agency can sort of launch out and do something independent of one another. And in the last couple of 3 years since the EPA petition, I feel the agencies have really come together. So that was the first thing we needed. Isaac is a good friend of the agency. There's many, you know, in water, ag, and health. But that's only the first step. And the next step, I think, is to really understand what needs to be done. And Director Hansen alluded to it, but we don't know everything that needs to be done. We don't understand the space of everything that needs to be done. I think DEQ space, which is regulating, I do want to just take a second, and the reason DEQ is so active in the La Guama is because we regulate facilities, mostly food processors, that take that nitrogen-rich water, which is food for farmers, and puts it on the land, and it can feed the crops. The situation that it's occurred with under DEQ's purview is we've allowed that nitrogen-rich water to simply be land applied during the winter when there's no uptake, when there's no crops, it's bare land, and so it just can go straight to groundwater and contaminate. So I think we know what to do. DEQ does know what to do in the narrow space there, which is regulating the food processors. I've learned a ton about farming. I come from my family's farming, but just learned a lot about, well, the other piece too is we don't know, and so we don't know how to measure yet. We don't know what actions to take yet, but we do need to find, especially in the ag area where we don't know as much, what actions we take that then can start to move the needle on that. I don't necessarily know what those are, but I know that we're going to have to work together to do it. You know, there's other sources that we regulate, septic on-site. I know that WRD is looking really closely at well construction, the drinking water issues, the emergency right now. So to the extent that ag feels singled out, ag isn't singled out, but I'll counter that with it's the biggest land use piece of the La Guama, right? It's the biggest land use. And we just need to figure it out. And to do that, we need to, I'm here to listen, I'm here to learn. And I can't emphasize that enough because we just can't take unilateral actions in the LUB and expect them to work, because farming's huge. You know, farming is the basis of the economy in Eastern Oregon. It means jobs, it means families. And, you know, one thing I was reflecting, I came up from the Redmond area, and I come from farmers, talk with my brothers who farm, and regulators, you know, we show up, we do our jobs, we work hard, and then we go home. And I realize it's really different when you're farmers. You know, it's like you don't go home from your farming, it's who you are and it's what you do. And we want to learn better how to work together and make this work. And it's tough, and we don't know how. So that's really what I want to say about the situation right now. I'd love to talk agronomic rates sometime, but not right now.
Well, Deputy Director, thank you. And in part, you answered the question. I'm sorry, Ela Miller for the record. Answered in part one of my questions, because there are a lot of sources, and I agree with you that the area ag covers, but let's just say the intensity of septic not working well or issues with wells that are not lined correctly and all that is, you know, again, just as long as we feel we're part of a whole and not being the only folks that are focused on. And I think one big aha I had with this presentation that I didn't realize, and shame on me because of my background, I didn't realize that ODA does have exceedingly broad authority to move forward in this arena. And I think we've just got to be very, very thoughtful, because I've always seen agriculture step up. If we know there's an issue, we're going to step up. But if we think that's maybe somebody else's issue, it's harder to do so. So anyway, appreciate you being here. But any other questions or comments from the board? We'll go a little bit into the panel and then kick off the panel. But given the fact that we have Deputy Director Davis here, I thought, any other comments, questions, discussions?
Ellie Norris, board. I just want to say thank you because you actually answered my question as well of what the actions of my neighbor, how do they impact me? How do we separate industrial residential from agriculture and who is kind of on the hook for it? And then I don't expect anyone to have an answer to this one, but the cost, like who's going to accrue the cost for this, for the soil analysis and in the trying to move the needle, whose shoulders will that fall upon? But that's something to think about.
Yes, Chair Miller, it's a great question. The one thing that's happening right now for all of us is that the governor's office and all the agencies are aligned. And I don't know if you've ever seen that before, but I've been around for a long time in government, and rarely do you get all the agencies in the governor's office aligned to make a difference. And so I also know our close friend in the governor's office, Courtney Kroll, has worked really hard both in the governor's office and the congressional delegation to secure funds to study it, so we know what we're looking at. There's also been funds to help with the on the ground, the drinking water emergency situation that Jonathan and Isaac have referenced. And there will be, I believe, in the governor's budget, which can come back to the board, of course, a proposal for funds for the area. Now, it took us 30 years to get into this situation, and we're not going to get out overnight, but there's a lot of resources and attention being paid to it. And I don't want to minimize that, whatever happens with irrigated ag could come with a price tag too. I don't want to minimize that, but there are other funds that are coming in right now to better understand and to better serve both drinking water and infrastructure. So, and, I think it's really important, and you all do this, all farms are not created equal, whether it be the soil type or the market for what you grow, big and small. And we're going to have to bring collective wisdom to honor the diversity of farming in the Guama.
Yeah, I think I'd just add to that too, is we went through an extensive exercise, right, to look at the policy side of it, right, look at the authority side, where we ended up in terms of saying, we believe we have sufficient authority, we just can't be continued to ask to do this on the cheap. Which is what we've been asked to do over and over and over again. And so, if we want those authorities to be realized, they're going to have to be resourced, and we can't do it on the cheap as we've been continued asked to do. So there's a lot of those kind of moving pieces, right? Different funding streams, but it's trying to get them all to align, which we're moving in a good direction, but we just have to make sure that we keep that as a central component of what we're doing as well.
Great. Anyone else? Dr. Santa Maria.
Lisa Santa Maria, for the record. I have a question. I know everybody's aligning this problem. How long will it take to develop this program? So it seems it's a need right now, but it seems it needs several pieces to put together to have this real. So what is your...
Yeah. So maybe I'll start, and then you can finish. I would say we understand the sense of urgency to it, and we are kind of the partners in trying to move it. I'll give the very unsatisfying probably government response though. One, it depends, right? But two, it's going to take as long as it needs to take to do it right. Because this is not something that we want to be just to rush into to miscalculate, misjudge, right? We want to be able to do it right, and so It's going to take time. This is not something that we're going to be able to stand up, exponentially, but
Yeah. Go? Okay, Chairman Miller. Really good question. We get asked that all the time. And then the nitrate reduction plan that has been mentioned here and will be public soon, we're breaking that into short, medium, and long term. And we're looking at the 4 agencies and what they do on those timelines. So we're getting more defined, I would say. And of course, the immediate issue is safe, clean drinking water, and that is Oregon Health Authority. The other piece, which is very short term, falls with my agency, which is making sure that food processors are permitted that in such a way that they don't add pollution. And it's been a big issue, speaking of costs, because now they're required to bill multi-million-dollar secondary treatment. It's no small thing. It's no small thing. They've known it's coming. In fact, in one of the processors' strategic plan, they had secondary treatment back in 2016, and now that they're under order, they're getting it done. But you know how it is. You don't want to do really expensive stuff. So I feel like your question is really important, and I encourage you to keep asking it. And as I said earlier, it's a 30-year issue. We want to take care of people and drinking water first. And we want to ensure a balanced approach going forward so that 8,000 people that are employed at the Port of Morro stay, so that small, medium, and large farmers can continue, to do what you do. It's a mystery that we'll have to solve piece by piece, I think.
Director Hansen, then we might want to wrap if that's
Great, thank you. So I'll try and tie it up. Thank you for your comments. I think Shannon did a great job of capturing. The urgency is getting safe drinking water to the local community and the people who need it. We have a long-term issue that it's going to take us a long time to get out of and actually clean up the groundwater. We know that. That said, I think there are steps being taken in many different places to begin to address it. And I'll just state for me from the director's seat, I feel a lot of pressure right now in helping to move us along on the ag side. And really the way I have been framing it is, can we come up with something and work collaboratively to develop a program to show if ag is continuing to add to the problem or not, which I think about it in some type of measurement, record keeping, certification type format. And then how, long-term, can we use agriculture to be part of the solution? Because agriculture can use that nutrient-rich water in a way to grow plants. And so there are multiple parts. We have a situation in front of us, so in terms of, I think about it in the urgency piece, there's ongoing need for research. That's one piece of it. But we can't wait for all the research for all the answers necessarily. We do need to start making steps on the ag side to make sure that we're not continuing to add to the problem. And that's really kind of the spot and focus. I think that we've tried to take in this is like, how do we find something within our authorities that helps us show and mitigate any future contributions.
Chair, I got.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Chad Allen for the record. I guess a bit more of a comment here. I think that the department's relationship with DEQ in the past around the CAFO program is a great example of places to look for how to be strategic on how you develop this plan. That was referencing surface water, but over the last 20 years, it's clearly made a huge difference in meeting those concerns. CAFO has been working under the necessity and requirements of nutrient management plans and record keeping and soil samples and all of those things. And you got quite a few CAFOs in this area that have been under those regulatory requirements. It'd be interesting to know how, when you move forward into the more traditional fertilizing of crops, how those farmers are going to be able to adapt or not. I mean, dairy adapted, and it, it was not easy, but it happened. And, it's a good program, and I think it's shown credibility to this department big time. Has set an example of how to create a CAFO program for all states in the U.S. that are still in a kind of infancy of doing that. I think the department's already done a lot of work in this space. It's just applying some of that slowly into the other sectors of ag and
Thank you, Director. Appreciate it. Well, let's take a wrap in this. Really appreciate again, Deputy Director Davis, for you coming over, and also Isaac, thank you for hanging in there, buddy, and Jonathan for helping pitch hit here for this presentation. There'll certainly be a lot more to come on this, so a lot more discussion. Thank you. And now, and if we could move quickly into, we have a local panel discussion. And Casey, are you going to kind of kick that off for us or intro that for us? So appreciate that.
Yeah, we can do that. So would you like them up here?
Yeah, I think it'd be great to, yeah, super. And we are running like, maybe 10 minutes late, but we expect maybe a big panel, but if we can still kind of keep adjournment around 11:30, that'd be great, but okay. Yeah, cool.
So I'm gonna let these ladies get to introduce themselves, and then we can go from there.
I'm Katie Walshley with Walshley Farms. I also am one of the commissioners on the Oregon Potato Commission that represents the Blue Mountain, one of 3 of the Blue Mountain commissioners.
And I'm Donna LaFleur from Milton Freewater, Oregon, and we have Ron LaFleur Apple Farms over there, kind of a mom and pop farm, but we export a lot of apples, and so it's very interesting and exciting to hear what you ladies would like to tell us. So
bear with me, I'm not really sure. So I was asked to come speak today. So kind of a little background, I do a lot of the food safety. So I handle all the trainings, the documents. I handle all the audits for an organic watermelon operation, conventional watermelon operation, and our fresh pack potato shed. So I guess just some of the issues that we're seeing, there's not a whole lot out there. There's a lot of food safety stuff, but as you're coming in new, there's not a lot of opportunity for, these young kids coming out of college and high school. You're seeing everybody wants all this experience, but there's so much demand. And every year the food safety industry comes up with more testing, more, oh, you need this, you need that, more logs, more cleaning, more sanitation, more strict policies, and then you have buyers that want all sorts of audits. So you're costing thousands of dollars to these farmers, especially small time. We're doing Global Gap, we're doing Primus, we're doing organic certifications, we're doing social audits for Costco, and then we've got FSMA, so that, and they never all they all want different things. So it's hard to mesh all of that together to make it all operate. So some of them want more stringent things, some of them are a little more broad. And then it's just more testing and more testing and more testing, which means more labs. And in Eastern Oregon, we don't have all the labs in one spot. They're all over the place. I have to send MRLs to Portland. I have to get them on a truck. I have to send in samples. Now we're doing environmental testing. We're testing for salmonella. We're testing for listeria on anything that's not food contact services. And we need to do that a monthly thing. So you have multiple samples, and that's in Yakima. We're in Hermiston, just so you guys know. That's an hour and a half to Yakima, about 3.5 hours, 4 hours on truck getting to Portland. So I've heard in the industry that the demand is there, but there's not a lot of supply in like food safety. So I was talking with Casey last night. I did like that they are working with the local FFAs now, where they are giving them the training in the food safety. But that's the other thing, like your guys' food safety on an orchard is going to be different than what I'm doing with the watermelons, and it's different when you go into these processing plants too. So there's just so much of it all over the place. And it'd be nice if we can, as an industry, start figuring out how to kind of combine these where we're not having, I don't know how to phrase that, so many different audits that really essentially do the same thing. So it'd be nice, like with FSMA, if they could align, and FSMA would be the one kind of that dictates the rest of food safety coming down, if that makes sense. Like going back to water, we are now testing for nitrates in our water this year. We did, and it came back clear. We did it 10 years ago, came back clear. We've had EPA out. Our water was fine. We're doing soil samples and soil testing through Ag Nutrient and Wilbur Ellis. And so, but this is costly things to keep coming back. So I guess it would be nice to have more, especially in Oregon with food safety, if we can kind of focus on or have some type of centralized audits or audit program for these people to come in and have the experience where they come in and they can have certifications. You're not really going to get that in college and have your degrees. Like somebody can have a degree, but they're never done a global gap or Primus audit, or what is it, ISF 2200 or something, I think is what processing plants go through, which is even more. So yeah, it would just be nice to see, now that the demand is growing each year and changing each year, so each program is changing. I can tell you in the last 2 years, the amount of environmental testing that we've done on a farm and the amount that it's costing us on top of these audits and paying for the auditors. These small time farmers, they can't afford to pay a food safety salary. You go to these processing plants and they're paying $75,000 plus a year for food safety because they need somebody there year round. When you have somebody in small time that's harvesting 2-3 months, and they're from planting to grow, you have 6 months, kind of your May, April to September, October for majority of them. You don't need somebody there, but you're not going to be able to afford to pay somebody a $50,000-$60,000 salary to work half a year. So yeah, it's becoming, so you get a lot of mom and pops and they don't understand food safety. They're like, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to test this? Why do I have to keep doing it? It's clean. We've trained these people. Why do I have to have a cleaning committee and a sanitation committee? Why do I have to have documents on them? Why am I writing down that I cleaned plastic watermelon bins at 8:05? You have to actually document the time. Then you have to sign it, and then you have to have a verification from a supervisor that's not somebody that did it. So it's just becoming time consuming that, these small time farmers don't have the time to do, and they don't want to do it. So I don't really know, but yeah, food safety is just a big issue, and it's going to be more and more as the years go on. So.
Thank you for those comments. Do you have any more to add? And then maybe we'll have a few questions from the board.
Well, the food safety issue with the apples is the same thing. We don't deal with quite as many different departments that she does, but we have to have our food safety certifications, and it's very expensive and time consuming. And like she said, you have to write down everything that you do every single day. And it's just really hard for we're a small farm compared to a lot of them, but we still do a lot of food safety and, exporting and different things. So we have a lot of rules. One of the things that we're dealing with right now in Milton Freewater is there's several orchards that have been abandoned, and it's really true that we could go out of business, and so can other people there if they find different pests, like considering like the apple maggot. That's kind of a big deal for what we're going through right now. But we have written letters, and we've sent the letters to the people that own the property, but I don't know if we have any way to enforce that. And it's kind of scary, actually, because, they find several and they can shut us down. or delay the shipment of apples, or other things. So that's kind of one of the big things that we're really concerned about. And we'd really like your help on a larger scale. We did send a letter from the Hort Society and told them that they need to get rid of their apples, but we don't have, do we have any way to actually enforce that? I don't know.
So we just started working, we just got a letter from the folks in Milton Free Water, the production folks up there, and we are working on it right now, Chris Benjamin and that team.
Yeah, and I think, the more you can help us, the better it'll be, because we just can't have that in our area. The other thing that we really need help on, and I don't know if you can help us or not, but the overtime law is really going to affect us greatly, and I'm sure we've heard many of you are shaking your head, so I assume that. But it is really totally different than when you run a business and you run 40 hours a week. But when you're harvesting, especially in apples or any kind of commodity, I suppose when you have a lot of labor force, these people don't work very much in the winter because it's cold and it's raining and it's snowing and everything else. So they're putting in 20, 30 hours a week probably in the winter time, but they want to make that extra money, and they'll put in 70 hours a week in harvest time because we need them, but they want the money. It's not like we're being unfair to them or being mean to them. I think sometimes you read an article and it says that we're really being mean by expecting them. They want that. And so I would really hope that somehow we could have a few months during harvest where they can actually work more. I mean, it's really going to be hard when it gets to 40 hours. I mean, I don't know how easy it's going to be. Have you found that too?
Yeah. So just that there's no exception to seasonal workers is, it's rough. So, and like she said, the workers, they want to be out there. They want those hours, and the smaller mom and pops, like we have about 2,000 acres on one side of our farm and another 2,000 on the other side. So, but when you're only running, like I said, full board 2.5, 3 months out of the year, and then you have to pay overtime. But the other issue is that we don't really have the labor over here. So a lot of it is through the staffing agencies. So for all of our watermelon picking crews, which is probably 30 to 40 people, when we're at our heaviest, they're all H-2A workers. So we're already paying 20 plus an hour regular to have them there. And on top of a fee through these staffing agencies. So then you go in and you pay them this overtime. I actually did do a round table talk with Governor Kotek about a year ago, and her response was, well, like any program, we just have to see how it works out. That was her concern, but she actually didn't even realize the amount of staffing agencies and migrant workers that the Eastern Oregon agriculture industry relies heavily on those staffing agencies, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to get our harvest out. We've had, this year is really rough for us in the watermelon. The markets weren't moving. We've had stuff we've had to throw out. So not only are we having labor shortages, we're cutting hours, just trying to make it work and not pay that overtime. Not that we don't want to, it's just we can't afford to. And now the loss that we have this year coming in on the melons, I mean, they're already ripping up the plastic and the water lines, and that's about 2 weeks earlier than we normally do. So we have a lot of good product still on the ground that didn't even get harvested. So I don't know about the orchards, but that's where we're at with that.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of questions and comments, and maybe if we could do this, do you two have time to stay a little bit longer? I would ask the board if we could, and I know Dean Simonich, you need to take off, but if we could have the board, we'll break for just a few minutes, grab our sandwiches so we can keep the process going and keep the discussion going over us eating our sandwiches, unless you guys are under.
I'm fine.
You're okay. And I'm sure we'll have enough sandwiches that you guys could join us to this. Yeah, since we're making you stay later. But yeah, if we could just quickly break. And literally, let's look at the back clock here. Come back at basically reconvene at 11:30.
So Carla, what time do we need to depart by?
We need to leave
No,
here at noon.
Okay. What the option is, we could also eat on the way. That's a very good point.
Actually, you'll leave at like 11:45 or 11:30. Depending on whether people need to stop anywhere on the way.
Okay. Okay.
So let's just talk logistics a little bit.
Yeah.
So we will be adjourning for the day. The board is attending Roundup. Some of the staff will attend as well. Staff are taking vacation, so no state resources will be wasted on that. We've all bought our own tickets, and those are in place. And then there are several of us that'll help to carpool and get people there. But I believe the performance starts at 1:15. So we are tight on time in terms of keeping things going so we can be there for the beginning. So if you guys are comfortable with kind of eating in transit, we could go ahead and just take a few questions and then try and wrap if that works.
Folks, okay, eating in transit, then we can just keep this going. Okay, let's do that. Let's do that. Okay, and then so we need to wrap this in order to have sandwiches like in the next 15.
Actually, probably more like 8, so that we've got a few minutes to grab, and that, to Josh's point,
Okay.
about a quarter till, we have to be out by noon.
Okay, so we have about 10-ish, 15-ish. Okay, so I cut you off, but I do think we've got some very interested board members that are ready to jump in with some questions or comments, especially, well, anyway, I won't even pretend what they're going to ask. So.
I want to thank you guys for
Dr.
both
Zielinski.
being here. Your issues are both unique. The abandoned apple orchard thing is crazy. That's kind of weird to me because, we just had a lot of talk about land use and how expensive farmland is, and to just imagine that there's acres of abandoned apples sitting out there kind of shows there's two sides to that thought to me. And that's I believe there's going to be similar problems in the valley with abandoned, hazelnuts and things like that, or not properly treated, I should say, as different groups of people buy land for different reasons. And then the overtime thing is something that we all talk about all the time as a board. We hear it everywhere we go. I think maybe it's time that we make a resolution about this. I think the timing would be good. I've been on the board for 4 years and we haven't made a resolution, but I think it's time that we stop going around listening to people talk about this and just sort of formulate I think the time is appropriate because we're coming up on a shift. It's going to go from 55 hours to 48 hours. Oh, and we can possibly turn this thing around or slow it down. I know that we can all live with a little bit of overtime, but going to 40 hours is insane. So anyway, thanks for bringing that up again.
Yes. Director Norris.
Ellie Norris. I just want to say thank you guys for coming. I don't really have a question, but what you said resonates with me. I oversee all the audits on our farm as well, and we do all the social audits. We do all the testing. We do absolutely everything. Everything you said, we do on our farm. And I agree. It's overwhelming for small mom and pops to do that kind of thing. And we're a fairly large farm, and it's even overwhelming for us at times. So I don't know what types of resources are out there or ones that we can start sniffing out, but it would be very beneficial, I think, for the medium to small farms. So thank you for that. And then obviously overtime is one that we talk about a lot, and we all feel that pinch. But thank you, ladies, for coming out today.
Right. Other questions, comments of the board? Well, maybe we are actually ending on time, but I'd like to leave the last few comments to you guys to wrap this up. So.
Go ahead. No.
Oh. I was just going to kind of reiterate on what Casey was telling me last night, where they've been working with the local FFAs so that they pretty much are certified as they come out of high school to work. So it would be nice to kind of maybe even work with him some more to set up some mentor, programs with these FFAs where it would be more beneficial for them to have hands-on experience. Like I would take on a couple out. I mean, I'm transitioning into a new job, so somebody is going to have to do mine. Because I can tell you that nobody there right now wants to do it. So, but to work with some of these local FFA chapters or kids, it would be a great exposure and a great experience for them coming into the, if they want to continue on with the ag industry, because we always need younger people. You need those younger generations to continue on because, that's the older ones, they don't always want to train us younger ones to take over. And so you have a problem where that fourth, fifth generation, they're not really a part of the farm anymore. So it would be cool to kind of work with him, and maybe even if you guys somehow could help out with that, with providing resources, it would be great to have them come out and be a good for the mom and pops where they could have still afford them. So they're just coming out with that experience and then help them